History leaves more than monuments. It leaves footprints. Some remain visible, others become buried beneath generations of assumptions, forgotten beneath the sands of time. No one can know with certainty what history's greatest minds would say about our world today. But we can follow the footprints they left behind and discover where they still lead. And so, the experiment continues.
Welcome to PostLogue. I'm Walter Cronkite. For more than 250 years, three words have echoed through the American experiment: the pursuit of happiness. School children memorize them, presidents quote them, nations have been inspired by them, yet I sometimes wonder, have we spent more time repeating those words than understanding them? In this episode, I'd like to ask the man who wrote them, President Thomas Jefferson, an American founding father, the third president of the United States, and the man to whom the Declaration of Independence is most attributable. Mr. President, thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you for that generous introduction.
Before the Declaration of Independence, John Locke described man's natural rights as life, liberty, and property. Mr. President, you made a deliberate choice. You replaced property with the pursuit of happiness. Looking back across 250 years, why?
Mr. Cronkite, when I was 33 years old, I believed I was writing about liberty. I have now had 250 years to reflect upon those words, and more than 2 centuries since my death to observe their consequences. I have learned a thing or two.
Such as?
That words, like children, sometimes become wiser than the one who first gives them life.
Which word became wiser, Mr. President?
Pursuit. Had I written life, liberty, and happiness, I might have implied that happiness could somehow be possessed. It cannot. Property may be possessed. Power may be possessed. Kingdoms may be possessed. Happiness forever remains a pursuit.
Why not simply leave Locke's words untouched? Life, liberty, and property. Or even add happiness without removing property. Surely property is also a natural right.
Indeed it is, but I feared future generations might someday mistake a means for an end. Property protects independence. Independence protects liberty. Liberty protects pursuit. The order matters.
Some today argue that because you omitted property, you regarded it as less fundamental. Others argue precisely the opposite. Were you diminishing property, Mr. President?
No, I was elevating purpose.
There is another question history has never allowed you to escape. You wrote, "All men are created equal, yet you owned slaves. How should history reconcile those two Jeffersons?"
I do not ask history to reconcile them, only to remember them. I can explain my circumstances. I cannot excuse my failures. I inherited an institution I neither created nor possessed the courage to destroy. History is justified in judging that failure. But I hope history asks another question as well. How do civilizations come to mistake custom for justice?
What do you mean?
Mr. Cronkite, I was not born into liberty. I was born into Virginia. There is a difference.
Perhaps every civilization mistakes some assumptions for permanent truths.
Which is why every generation must continue the pursuit.
Mr. President, one final question before we invite others into our conversation. Looking back now, would you write different words?
No. I would understand them differently.
Our next guest devoted his life to asking a different question. Not what must governments protect, but what kind of life deserves to be called good? More than 2,000 years before President Jefferson, he began a conversation that has never truly ended. He tutored Alexander the Great, founded one of history's greatest academies, and concluded that happiness was not pleasure nor wealth, but human flourishing. Aristotle, welcome.
Aspazo, my Mr. Cronkite, Mr. President, it is a pleasure to discover that our conversation has merely been interrupted, not ended, by 23 centuries.
Master Aristotle, the honor is mine. I have long regarded you as one of my teachers.
Then perhaps Today, we shall become one another's students.
President Jefferson has spoken of liberty as the condition under which free people pursue happiness. Master Aristotle, you devoted your life to understanding happiness itself. When you listened to President Jefferson, did you recognize your own thinking?
Very much. Though we approached the mountain from different directions, President Jefferson asks, "What must government preserve?" I asked. "What kind of person should a human being become?" Different questions, one destination.
And what is that destination?
Human flourishing, not pleasure, not comfort, not wealth, a life well lived.
Many people today use the words happiness and pleasure almost interchangeably. Did the Greeks?
No. Pleasure is an experience. Happiness is a life. Pleasure visits. Happiness is built.
That distinction I wish I had explained more clearly.
Perhaps. History has explained it for you. A musician becomes excellent by playing, a physician by healing, a citizen by living honorably. Character is cultivated, not inherited.
Then happiness cannot simply be declared.
No more than an acorn may declare itself an oak. It must grow. Everything living becomes. Nothing living simply arrives.
Master Aristotle, history remembers another part of your philosophy. You defended what you believed to be natural slavery. Modern audiences struggle deeply with that. How do you reconcile the philosopher of virtue with the philosopher who accepted slavery?
Mr. Cronkite, I cannot defend every conclusion I reached, only the honesty with which I sought it. Every civilization mistakes some customs for nature itself. Mine did. Your civilization did also.
Yes.
The greatest danger to philosophy is not ignorance, it is familiarity. We cease examining that which everyone around us believes.
So wisdom requires questioning one's own civilization?
Especially one's own civilization.
Master Aristotle, perhaps our greatest mistake was believing ourselves less captive to our own age than we truly were.
That is a mistake every age seems destined to repeat.
Yet history judges both of you harshly for slavery. Was history wrong?
No. History has the advantage of consequences. We possessed only circumstances.
History also possesses another advantage, distance. Distance often reveals patterns invisible to those living within them.
Patterns.
Every civilization inherits assumptions. Every civilization mistakes some of them for eternal truths. Every civilization eventually discovers that some were merely temporary arrangements.
Then perhaps the pursuit applies to civilizations as well as individuals.
Now, we are approaching one another.
Gentlemen, both of you have spoken of liberty, virtue, and civilization. Our next guest experienced a world in which every one of those seemed to disappear. He was an Austrian psychiatrist. Then history placed him inside Nazi concentration camps. He lost his parents, his brother, his wife, almost everything. Yet from that suffering emerged one of the 20th century's most influential books, Man's Search for Meaning. Dr. Viktor Frankl, welcome.
Mr. President, Master Aristotle, I have listened with admiration, but I wonder whether we have been asking the wrong question.
What question should we have been asking?
Not what is happiness, but what can never be taken away from a human being.
Surely happiness itself cannot survive tyranny.
No, nor should we expect it to. There were no happy men in Auschwitz. There were hungry men, cold men, terrified men, broken men. Yet there were still men.
What remained?
Choice, not freedom of movement, not freedom of speech, not property, not comfort, the freedom to choose one's response. That freedom proved more difficult to imprison than any prison. Everything else could be taken, not everything within.
Doctor, perhaps I described the liberty governments should protect. You have described the liberty governments cannot destroy.
I believe they are companions, not the same thing. One is external, one must become internal.
Then virtue survives circumstance.
Sometimes it does not. That is why courage matters.
Dr. Frankl, President Jefferson has spoken honestly about slavery. Master Aristotle has acknowledged that his own civilization accepted what ours rejects. You experienced something different, not slavery, but systematic dehumanization. What did that teach you about the human spirit?
That the human spirit is astonishingly resilient. Others may deny your dignity, humiliate you, strip away your possessions, even your name. They may refuse to recognize your humanity, but they cannot finally decide who you become.
Doctor, that is both comforting and deeply unsettling.
Why unsettling?
Because it leaves every one of us without excuse.
Yes.
Mr. President, history often calls slavery America's original sin, yet slavery long preceded America. Master Aristotle lived within it. Rome accepted it. Empires accepted it. Much of civilization accepted it. What should we learn from that?
That intelligence alone does not prevent moral blindness. Master Aristotle, perhaps our greatest mistake was believing ourselves less captive to our civilization than we truly were.
Every civilization inherits assumptions. Few recognize them while living among them.
Perhaps every generation teaches people what not to notice.
History remembers John Brown very differently. He refused to accept slavery's permanence. He gave his life trying to destroy it. What should we learn from him?
That moral conviction is indispensable,
but never sufficient.
One must also ask whether the means preserve the humanity the end hopes to defend.
Then history leaves us not simple answers, but paradoxes.
Civilizations seldom choose between perfect good and perfect evil. More often, they struggle between competing goods and competing tragedies. Prudence lies in recognizing the difference.
And sometimes history reveals that what one generation called prudence, another generation calls delay.
Which is why humility may be the rarest virtue.
Dr. Frankl, our previous discussion ended with concern that artificial intelligence may someday deprive millions of people, not merely of employment, but of purpose. Would that concern you?
Very much. Human beings do not merely ask, how shall I live? Sooner or later, every human being asks, who still needs me? Purpose begins there.
Our final guest has spent a lifetime studying how human beings grow and what they seek at different stages of life. Millions recognize the hierarchy that bears his name. But Professor Abraham Maslow believed human beings were created, not merely to survive, but to become. Professor Abraham Maslow, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Cronkite, Mr. President, Master Aristotle, Dr. Frankl.
Professor.
Professor, you've been listening, I suspect. You've heard 4 different conversations.
Actually, I believe I've heard only one.
Only one?
President Jefferson began with liberty, Master Aristotle with virtue, Dr. Frankl with meaning. I begin with human needs. We have simply approached the same mountain from different sides.
Then perhaps you should lead us to the summit.
Mr. Cronkite, there isn't one. Every stage of life reveals another horizon. The child seeks safety. The young adult seeks belonging. The craftsman seeks mastery. The parent seeks responsibility. The elder seeks significance. Every answer gives birth to another question. Human beings are not designed merely to survive. They are designed to continue becoming.
Then happiness changes?
Our understanding of it changes. A hungry child and an accomplished surgeon are not pursuing the same happiness, nor should they.
Yet both may pursue excellence.
Exactly. The object changes. The pursuit does not.
Then perhaps that explains something I have only recently begun to understand. When I was 33, I thought happiness was the destination. 250 years later, I believe pursuit was.
Mr. President, I think you chose a wiser word than even you then realized.
Professor, History has never produced greater prosperity, longer lives, more comfort, more opportunity. Yet so many people still speak of loneliness, anxiety, and a lack of purpose. Why?
Because prosperity answers only the first questions. It cannot answer the last ones. Comfort prepares the soil. It cannot decide what shall grow there.
Nor can suffering. It merely asks the question more urgently.
Exactly. Every fulfilled need creates the freedom to pursue another.
Professor, our previous discussion ended with artificial intelligence. Many fear losing employment, others fear losing something deeper, purpose. Should that concern us?
Very much. If machines someday perform every task better than human beings, our greatest question will no longer be, what shall we do? It will become, what shall we become?
And who still needs us?
Exactly.
Gentlemen, when we began, I thought we were discussing happiness. Mr. President, perhaps the better question is this. What is liberty for?
Mr. Cronkite, when I was 33, I believed liberty was the destination. I have now had 250 years to watch free people pursue countless different lives. I now believe liberty was only the beginning. Governments may secure liberty. They cannot bestow happiness. They cannot command virtue. They cannot create meaning. They cannot complete a human being. They can only preserve the freedom through which each of us continues the pursuit.
Toward excellence.
Toward meaning.
Toward dreams.
Toward becoming. When I wrote those words, I believed I was writing about liberty. I now suspect I was writing about hope.
Mr. President, when we began, I asked what you meant by the pursuit of happiness. I no longer think that's the question. I think the better question is this. Why did you choose pursuit?
Mr. Cronkite, when I was 33 years old, I believed I was writing about liberty. 250 years later, I believe I chose a wiser word than the young man who chose it.
Pursuit.
Yes, had I written life, liberty, and happiness, I might have promised something no government and no human being could ever deliver. Property may be possessed, power may be possessed, kingdoms may be possessed. Happiness cannot.
Nor excellence.
Nor meaning.
Nor human potential.
Exactly. How curious. Without realizing it, I chose the one word that could never become obsolete. Every generation pursues something different, yet every generation pursues.
Mr. President, there is another sentence that was written only a few years after your own that has also endured remarkably well.
The Constitution.
To form a more perfect union. Not a perfect union, a more perfect one.
Mr. Cronkite, I never noticed it.
Noticed what?
That we express the same philosophy twice. The pursuit of happiness. A more perfect union. Neither promises a rival.
Excellence is never complete.
Meaning is never exhausted.
Growth never ends.
Then perhaps it is pursuit itself that ennobles free people.
Even if we know we can never completely arrive?
Especially then. The child who no longer dreams, the scientist who asks no further questions, the artist who creates nothing new, the republic that believes itself complete, have all reached the same destination, and it is not a happy one. When I wrote those words, I believed I was writing about liberty. I now believe I was writing about hope.
Perhaps that is tonight's answer. The pursuit of happiness was never a promise that happiness could be possessed. It was an invitation to continue becoming. For individuals, for families, for republics, for civilization itself. And perhaps at the moment we believe this is as good as it gets, the pursuit ends.
And so does the experiment.
If free people never cease becoming, perhaps civilizations do not either. Every generation redraws the boundaries between right and wrong, sometimes because humanity changes, sometimes because the world changes, sometimes because both do. Why? Next time, we'll follow another set of footprints. Joining us, Edmund Burke, who believed traditions preserve wisdom accumulated across generations. John Stuart Mill, who believed no assumption should ever be beyond question. Margaret Mead, who showed that cultures often answer the same human questions in remarkably different ways. And Max Weber, who explored how beliefs become institutions, and institutions in turn shape civilizations. In the meantime, PostLogue introduces its newest feature. PostLogue PS invites you to become a PostLogue accomplice. Ask a panelist a question. Suggest a PostLogue episode topic. Nominate a posthumous PostLogue panelist. Send us an Ask video at ps.postlogue.com. Your ideas, participation, and most importantly, your trust make this experiment possible. We intend to merit that trust. Until next time, this is Walter Cronkite for PostLogue.
Many lives of great men and women remind us that we too can make our lives sublime, and in departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. PostLogue is a sands of time experiment.